the rest of mine will be just impressions that I remember. Some of my most, the memories that stick with me. I remember being in my office, and my office mate was, I guess you'd call him the communist enforcer among the faculty.
Informer?
No, enforcer.
Enforcer, oh yeah.
Yeah. And he was there to make sure the American lecturer didn't get out of order. And he was sort of I got along with him, but the day of the first week of the strike, he got a call, and I was in the office, and I watched him. He answered the phone, and he was bald, and sweat started pouring down his head. I've never seen that happen before, where sweat just pours down like a river down somebody's head. It couldn't happen if he had hair, I don't think, because, you know, it just like this. And I said, and so he got off the phone, and I said, well, what happened? And he said, I've been just told to do something that will either make my career or ruin my career. And he had got a call from his communist authorities. And we had the Xerox machine in our office, and this is before computers. This thing was worth gold. It was the British consul's Xerox machine. So for some reason it was in my office. And he had been told to swipe the key so nobody could use the Xerox machine to make more signs. And what he was thinking, because he believed in nothing, was, what do I do? What choice do I make here? And you could see a man facing a choice that could, you know, change his life a lot. And he said, and then he asked me, what should you do? And I started laughing because he's asking me. And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, you know, I wish I knew what was going to happen a month down the line, because that'd make it real easy for me. And I said, well, yeah, of course. And what he did is he chose to go with the communist authorities and lost his position at the school eventually. He was a jolly, sort of despicable man. That was one of my memories, because you don't see a person facing a choice like that very often. Another one is tied to the slide we have. Libor has mentioned happenings, and there were a number of them, and this is the one that, the first one I saw, I guess this is the first one that the students did. And I was at the university, and a friend of ours said, you got to go and see this. And I said, what? It's too cold. If anybody knows me, I hate cold weather. And I said, I don't want to sit out there and stand in cold weather. She said, please come along. So I went down here, and this is a square that had a statue of Stalin and Lenin. And in a square, in front of a building, apartment building that had communist slogans. And they had decided to have this kind of celebration, rebellion against the statue, and they took these pastel-colored balloons and wrapped them slowly around. Well, they first covered the Stalin statue. There was more ambivalence about Lenin, so they wouldn't do it right away for Lenin. And then they said, oh, what the hell. And they put it around the Lenin statue. And then they did a folk dance around the statue, everybody singing, and it was just really a joyous experience. While they were doing that, next one, two guys were rappelling up the apartment building to take the communist slogans off the apartment building. And this was the whole thing that they were talking about, is they wanted to make the square safe for children to play in. And I think you eventually stayed there, and I stayed with you in an apartment, this apartment building, in 2000, yeah. It's a really nice apartment building. Those were happenings, and that was one of the most joyous experiences that I watched. And then there was another happening, and this is where they took down all the communist signs all over Olomouc and brought them to the museum and had the Museum of former communist signs. Libor, maybe you can read some of these?
Well, not from here, but we have another one.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I mean, one of these are parts of them, and one of them was with the Soviet Union forever, you know, Soviet Russia. There was some reminding us that how big friends they are. The Warsaw Pact, something else. It's a strong Czechoslovak army. It's a strong part of the Warsaw Pact. And then, I mean, there are all sort of things that people never read. In fact, for the first time I was confronted with the stupidity of all this by the British, by Mr. President. Yeah, there were British students in 1989 there, the first Western students of our age we met, and we were excited. We asked them to teach us all the swear words in English, but that was before the revolution. During the revolution, they were with us still. They did some editing, and they did some speaking on the materials we were producing for the world. But they were amazed by the signs because they were so conspicuous everywhere. They said, "What is written in there?" And I said, "You know, like." We are struggling for the world's peace, we want socialism everywhere, and so on. They say, "Why do you have it there?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I mean, nobody reads them anyway." I said, "Even more so. If nobody reads them, why do you have them?" And then it makes you stop looking at those British thinking, "Yeah, that's right. Why do we have them?" And we didn't have an explanation why. Just like when I came in 1990 to the United States, and some of my classmates said, "Oh, you poor Czechs, you know, the Russians came over in 1968, and they barbed wires all across your border so that you couldn't escape them. You had barbed wires, like they built those barbed wire fences around your country." And I said, "Oh yeah, well, in fact, it was not the Russians. It was our authorities." They said, "But the Russians wanted you to do it, didn't they?" Well, I said, "Well, maybe they wanted. They didn't say it explicitly, because I remember, you know, our president, you know, saying, 'Oh, well, the border, the national border is not a walking place. You know, you have to have some kind of a fence there.'" And so we did build the barbed wire fences. And so they looked at me, these Americans. They said, "So, do we get it right? The Russians came. They didn't ask you for anything. They just, you know, looked at you, and what you did, you barbed wired yourself in, and then all those 20 years didn't dare to get over it, and were kind of whining that you cannot escape." And I said, "Well, it looks funny, I know. It probably was not that easy, but the thing is that the moment we had, you know, it was really like you have this fence you do not get across. You were afraid even to approach it. Of course, I mean, there is a military, like at the Berlin Wall, you know, with machine guns and everything, but it was our soldiers. It was not Russian soldiers. It was Czech soldiers, Czech barbed wire, Czech people who put up the fences. And then the next day, when you have a demonstration and you say, we don't want those fences anymore. And some guys go up there, take the pliers, you know, and cut them and take them down. And everybody's looking and saying, "That was that easy? We didn't figure out for 20 years. Well, at least, you know, maybe the last 2-3 years when the Russians had this glasnost in perestroika with Gorbachev, we could have done it much earlier. We never figured." So some of the things that dismantling the communist rule was so fast, and somehow, and now and then you would come across such absurd situations that you would have to stop and think, how come we could stand it for 20 years and play the game when it was so easy just to say no? No, it was not so easy, but as I say, from the outsider's point of view, now and then when you look at yourself from the outside, you think, that was really absurd. So these were the signs, and we were putting them down because there were the names of the streets also. It was not only the signs, the streets were called like Stalin's Street, Lenin's Street, the People's Militia Street, the Street of the Victory. And we didn't have any anti-American streets, but you know, we did have all those wonderful streets named by all the victories of socialism and communism and so on. So we took them down and then renamed them. Now we have named the streets by the name of trees, flowers, and other things. This is more normal. Still have probably some streets commemorating Czech history, but probably not so much as socialist history. So that was the Museum of Communist Science. We still have it somewhere in the signs. Now, of course, we don't have the signs. We have billboards with commercials. I don't know what is better, but we do have them.